nephron. Let's get into the tiny part. Now we're thinking microscopic, okay? So we are now inside this, okay? So we're in there. We're like Miss Frizzle, we're Magic School Bus on a microscopic level, and we are floating through the nephron. And there's that Survey Monkey question. There are millions of nephrons in each kidney. And we know that this is where the cleanup of the blood is taking place because it's removing excess water. And how do we do that? Well, we pee. It's removing waste. And how do we get rid of the waste? Through the pee. And it's also removing any toxic substances that we just don't need anymore. And that's also through pee. But we learned yesterday also that it is going to return necessary things that it senses that we can still use or need, like sodium, potassium, phosphorus. So a lot of our electrolytes and minerals, vitamins, stuff like that. All right, and this picture gives you a brief look at how the circulatory system is working. So the wasted and dirty blood basically comes in and it's sent to all these individual areas, and it's, not all the blood's headed to one. It's sent to, all. That's why there's so many, so that it can not put strain on any specific one. If there's millions and they work together, it puts a lot less strain. So now all inside of that nephron, there's these teeny, teeny, tiny little um, uh, I like to think of them as sub-filtering stations. And they're basically um, their own little factory. And we call this the loop of Henle, okay? And this is, look, each one of these, there's one located inside every single nephron. So we have lots and lots and lots of these, right? And they're all their own mini processing and filtering unit inside each nephron. I know it seems kind of complicated, but it'll make more sense. Each nephron contains the renal corpuscle and a tubule, right? And the renal corpuscle contains the glomeruli and the Bowman's capsule, which is, the Bowman's capsule basically is just what encloses and holds on to this, okay? As the blood moves into the glomerulus, the nephron removes the waste and discards it by the tubules, okay? And that's what we see. Let me see if I can move. Yes. And that's what we're seeing right here. So here's that Bowman's capsule, and here's where it's moving and filtering through, and it's another filtration process, and then through the tubule, and from there it's delivering the waste. Now, the kidneys, so we know their job, it's a big filtration system, taking dirty blood and waste and excess of water, turning it to urine and sending it out, right? But how's it going to get? Well, how's it going to leave out of there is anything that's still useful will be sent back to the blood and along through the systemic of the body. Anything that is not useful, like the waste products or excess water, will be sent along its way into the ureter. And then from there, we're going to learn this about, depending on the size of the person, but it can be anywhere from 8 to 12 inches long. And then they are themselves slightly muscular. They're able to contract and expand. But this is the big problem. Now, I know that this picture makes it look like they're large, but they're not. If you was to take a look at them, their entire diameter is only about 6 millimeters. So that's tiny, tiny, tiny. So little bits of small amounts of urine have no problem because it's liquid flowing through the ureters. And then it's retained in the bladder until our body is ready to release it from the bladder via the urethra. Okay? So remember, they look big in this picture, but they're actually teeny tiny. And the bladder, we know probably a lot more about the bladder than we do other structures as far as how our own personal experiences. Because you fill your bladder every day, right? If you drink too much and you've got to go to the bathroom, what does your bladder do? Your bladder tells you, hey, it's time to go to the bathroom, and you get that urge. And that urge is what helps stimulate you to go release the excessive water and waste. Now, the bladder itself, this is also, I think, a SurveyMonkey question. It can hold about 16 ounces of urine in the normal person. So you go think about your sodas and stuff, and you know how your bottle is a 12-ounce bottle or a 16-ounce bottle, and then you think about the big old 24-ounce cups you get from Starbucks or whatever, and think, or the Route 64s from Sonic. Is your bladder going to be able to hold all that? No, it's crazy. It can only hold about 16 ounces. So when it gets full, right, there are nerves and there are sensors, and it tells our body it's time to dump. And then that's when it will leave, and we have a sphincter. Now, y'all remember me talking about the sphincters before, back up in the stomach. We had the cardioesophageal sphincter and the pyloric sphincter, right? And our rectum is a sphincter. Well, the urethra has one as well. And what the urethral sphincter is basically just like the others. It opens and can close, but it's a muscle-based contraption, basically, that stays constricted and tight, but can loosen allow it to open when it's time to urinate. Now, if you've ever had a urinary tract infection, or if you were pregnant with a large child, you will know that this little muscle doesn't necessarily work as well as you want it to after having a large child or a urinary tract infection, because it can get weakened over time. And that actually can cause us to leak urine and have small, tiny amounts of urine leakage. That's why I know if you're a mom, you're going to be able to relate to this. That's why if you've ever sneezed or started laughing and you have to cross your legs so you don't tickle yourself, that's because the urinary sphincter has loosened. I am one of them. I know for a fact if I'm going to start laughing, and especially if I got to go to the bathroom, that's it. I better run, I better go, or I'm going to tinkle myself. And it's just facts. Sneezing does it too, and we're going to talk about that. And there's different degrees of it, but it's all it relates to what we call incontinence. But fortunately, there is something that you can do as a lady. I think guys can do it. I'm not sure, but it's called a Kegel exercise. And the Kegel exercise is actually kind of a two-in-one benefit, because not only when it's basically like when you're sitting and you squeeze your booty and your bottom and downstairs, and you squeeze it, hold it, hold it, hold it, and then relax. If you do that a bunch of times a day, what you're doing is you are tightening not only the muscles around the vagina, you are also tightening and squeezing and help working that pelvic floor and that urethral sphincter. So you're keeping that muscle in shape. You're keeping it from becoming loosened. So you don't have more chances as you get older of tinkling when you sneeze. And that's pretty much what it's talking about, how that it's elastic and it can hold and you can stretch it, but boy, you sure do feel it when you fill your bladder up with too much urine. Now, what's kind of cool about the bladder is it has 4 different layers. Do I expect you to know these layers? Nah, just know that there's 4 layers, and they all have important parts. One's like a mucosal part, one's a muscle part, one's a fatty part, right? They have the different parts, and each part plays its layer. It plays its part. Now, the ending. The ending is the urethra. Now, this is where, when we were talking sex ed, I told you that so many girls were confused. They did not know either A, that this thing existed. They thought that when they urinated out of their vagina or clitoris. That they had no clue that there was another wee little hole down there called a urethra. And men urinate and ejaculate from the urethra. So theirs is a 2-in-1 combo. And we've talked about that when we talked, sex education. But the urethra, especially when we're thinking about in the female, it's going to be shorter. It is going to have a less area, and you would think that would keep you from getting more infections, because the longer the urethra, the more chance of infections, but it actually does the opposite. And here's why. Because if you've ever had a little girl or changed a little girl's diaper or anything like that, you've been told when you wipe a girl, you wipe that baby from the front to the back. And the reason that we're doing that is so that we are not introducing, if we went back to front, we could be taking fecal matter, poo-poo, and accidentally running it across the urethra. And that could get into the urinary system and cause severe infection. Now, men don't have to worry about that because their urethra is long, it's attached through the penis, and there's not that, when they poo, they don't have to worry about the penis and the urethra coming in contact with feces, right? So that's the difference. So remember, always, females, we wipe from the front to the back because the urethra lies right underneath the clitoris, but right over the vagina. And it's a tiny, small opening, and we don't want that to be contaminated because it can lead to urinary tract infections. And this shows us here with the male and their bladder. They have this here, and their whole waste disposal in the back, way back there's no issue. Now, as ladies, all of our lady parts, including number 1 and number 2, is relatively in the very close proximity. So we want to make sure that when we wipe front to back. Now, with women, a lot of times one of the first signs that we see with is that that's my check my blood sugar. Y'all bear with me real quick. I'll try to keep talking while I check my blood sugar, but I've been having to check it because a couple of weeks ago I woke up and I felt really horrible. And I'm pre-diabetic, and I took my blood sugar and it was 147 in the morning fasting, and that's bad. And I went, well, holy bag of balls. So what am I going to do to fix that? So I don't want to be on diabetic medication because I know what that leads to. So I talked to a friend of mine. I've always been very reluctant about the keto diet. Started it, and I haven't, since I started it in the last about 5 days, I haven't had a blood sugar over 120. Well, besides right now it's 139, and I know why it was a little high, and that's because I slipped a banana in my shake. Bananas are a very excellent source of sugar. So there, you just had your little diabetic lesson for the day. But technically, am I diabetic? Yes, because I've had blood sugars over 200 a couple of times. But am I controlling it? I'm type 2. Am I controlling it without medication? As of now, yes, because I'm tracking it on an app, and this, for the first time in probably a year since I've started this diet, I woke up with a blood sugar under 100. This morning I woke up and it was 90, and that was just like, woohoo! That's really good. Now back to the urinary. Okay. So, and I need to remember about 1:30. Okay. So when a woman gets a urinary tract infection, or she gets any kind of infection or bacteria, could be sexually transmitted, usually one of the first signs that she's going to feel is inflammation and discomfort in the urethra, because that's the first portion. And if it's not treated, it can lead up, believe it or not, and that bacteria or infection can travel into the bladder and all the way up into the ureters and affect the kidneys. So we want to avoid that. We want to avoid it. We're going to talk a bunch about urinary tract infections. And while I was talking diabetics real quick, why do you think diabetic people are more prone to urinary tract infections, and they're more prone to things like fungal infections or yeast infections and things like that? Well, anybody know? No?
Well, I'm sorry. Can you say the question again? Something
No,
told me.
that's fine. Why do you think a person, if they were diabetic, might have a higher chance of having an inflamed urethra or getting a urinary tract infection or a fungal infection or any kind of infection if they're diabetic?
Diabetic?
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
that's okay. And it's the whole reason comes down to this, is when we do develop diabetes, our body is slower to heal. It is slower to get rid of. And it's also, remember when we talked about diabetes in the bottoms of their feet and why they got so many sores was because the circulation slowed down? Well, it's similar. It's along the same lines here. Is they're just more prone to infection because their body is working harder in all other aspects. All right. It's just kind of a refresher on your diabetes because, yeah, like I said, you'll see a lot of diabetic patients. Now, this next part we're going to get into, and y'all can still see my screen, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I was worried.
Yes.
I didn't see the thing. I got worried there. So, next part we're going to get into is urine. Okay. So, what happens when the kidneys decide that, all right, we've got this blood in here, and we're taking out the water, we're taking out the waste. There's three processes. And this, I believe, is one of your questions as well, if I'm not mistaken. It says something about name the three processes of urine formation or filtration or something like that. But the first process is filtration. All right. And this takes place where? The kidney. Okay. Inside the entire kidney structure, but mainly in our nephrons, right? And how many nephrons do we have? Millions.
Millions.
Yes, good. And then the next portion of the urine process is reabsorption. After the body has filtered it, it decides, do we need any of these essential nutrients or minerals or anything? And so, yes, if we do, like sodium or potassium or something, it sends it back. It reabsorbs that and sends it back to the body. And then lastly, the last function in the process is secretion. And so everything that the body and the urinary and the kidneys deem as we don't need this anymore is going to secrete and get rid of via urination. So the three processes are filtration, reabsorption, and secretion. Okay? That's very important, and that's questions you'll see like on a national registry exam. And I've been with y'all for so long, I totally didn't even realize y'all were seniors. And it just, yesterday when I saw that, it just about blew my mind. I was like, oh my gosh. So yeah, that's the processes. And on that national registry, I'm sure somewhere it's going to tell you, it's going to ask you that, which of these is a process of, the urine formation or filtration, reabsorption, and secretion. You'll see it. Now, here's a term you may or may not know. If you ever go to the doctor or your doctor says, I tell that patient to void in the cup, and you look at them, you're like, what? Tell them to do what in the cup? Void means to pee. That's all. Sorry, the cat's having a cat attack. Now, there are, of course, medical terms like to be technical and difficult. So there is another term for this, and it's called mictration, and that's just another term for voiding or urinating or peeing. Okay, so all of those are the same thing. Okay, fat boy, he was acting up in my last lecture. And it's, it was funny. I turned my camera to show everybody him, and he ran off like, well, I wasn't doing nothing. This is one of the last things we're going to cover today, is we're going to talk about urine composition. Okay? This makes it so easy. 95% of urine is water. That, right? Makes it pretty easy. Now, 2% is urea. And we're going to come back and talk about this urea later, okay? Because if it's too high, that could mean trouble. We're also going to come back and talk about this creatinine, ammonia, and uric acid, because it's only 0.2%. So if it's real high, that means there's trouble in the urinary system, right? But the rest, the majority of what's left out of that 95, that other 5%, is just other things like salts and ions and dissolvents that have dissolved in the body. All right, the waste, right? This is all considered waste. But these, if these are high, these might be a sign something else is wrong. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. We'll start getting into the actual, let me see. Yeah, we'll start going more into urinary processes. It may not be tomorrow, it might be the next day, but this will get you prepared. 95% of urine is water. And then there's these other parts. And I've actually got an entire lecture that I'm going to teach y'all about urinalysis, because besides besides getting the vital signs, blood pressure, pulse, respirations, temperature, one of the other, and I've told y'all this before, one of the other things that you're going to do so often in the laboratory is a urinalysis, right? So you need to be able to understand, when you do that urinalysis, what each individual square on the test means, what it represents. And that's what I'll make sure that y'all really understand that, especially since y'all are seniors and fixing to be headed out. It's going to be vital that you start brushing up on your those skills, like your vital signs, urination, the process of it. When you get to lab and y'all are working in lab, you want to make sure that you're covering all of going back and getting them skills to where you feel comfortable. Hooking up a 12 lead EKG, putting on and donning and doffing medical equipment. That's, God, right now with the pandemic, it is so vital that y'all take that part seriously. It is so important that you know what item to remove first, then you know how to remove your gloves properly. We do not want cross-contamination. We do not want anyone coming down with COVID, okay, because they either did something improper, or even going back and reviewing hand washing is going to be vital. But we're, like I said, and we're also, you should be covering phlebotomy and practicing, and you should also be doing injections. And these are the areas that whenever I find out who your lab instructor is, that I'm going to talk to them and let them know these guys are seniors, so they need a little bit of everything. So one day you might go in and the lab instructor, because whoever your lab instructor is, we'll talk. We'll be talking every single day. And they're basically acting for me. And I know that y'all have had, I guess, confrontation with Miss Spring, but in all honesty, Miss Spring is really informative. And if I had to choose anybody, I choose her to give y'all your lab. Honestly, but she's only going to be there till November. So if you haven't finished, she's leaving at the end of October. If you have not finished your labs by then, I don't know who you're going to get. So try to get your labs in, because she'll teach you the ways like how I would be teaching you. And if we were in lab, I'm very strict. I have no playing. I don't tolerate, remember these things, guys. And I mentioned this yesterday. Fingernails, I don't want to see them. Your hair needs to be pulled back or up at all times. You need to have closed-toed tennis shoes on. You need to be in your uniform. You need to have your ID. You need to have proper daytime makeup if you wear makeup. We're not going to the nightclub. We ain't looking sexy for anybody. And we need to make sure we have proper jewelry on. And that proper jewelry is an earring that is a stud that cannot be, or a tiny hoop that's close to the ear. We are not wearing the gigantic ankle holders to work. We're not wearing anything dangly. We're not wearing bracelets and rings, because what do all those things do? They put us at risk. Earrings, because if you work in PD, that's the first thing they're grabbing is your hair and your earring, and necklaces, and anything else like bracelets and rings. That's just one other place that a virus or bacteria can hide on and possibly contaminate you later. So think about these things. Go back over, what we've been talking about throughout all of these mods, and thinking about as far as safety and putting it into practice. Because soon, and I've never said this to students before, soon your PPI, your personal protective equipment, and your knowledge literally could be keeping you safe and protected from COVID, a lethal virus. I've never sent students out on extern during a pandemic and never had to worry about them. Actually, I have sent students to HIV clinics, and I've sent students to infectious disease, but I've never sent a large group to all over different places where every single person they come in contact with could be contagious. And I want y'all to think about that, okay? Really think about that and let that start soaking in, and really help you keep in mind that no matter, every step that you learned about PPI and lab safety and that needs to stay right on the top of your every thought, okay? All right, I'm going to end today's lecture here. Let me get roll real quick. Meeting details. No, that's not it. Blah, 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 blah. Where is it not? Meeting notes? No. No. Why is it not doing it? I don't know. Let me just take a screenshot. Oh, people. Maybe it's under people. Purchase. Aha! There we go. All right. So I got that downloaded. All right. Y'all have a wonderful day. And if I hear something today that says, oh, hey, we figured out who's going to be teaching and what hours, I'll let y'all know as soon as I do. Okay, guys? If you have not done your Survey Monkeys, please get them in. And I'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye.
Bye. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.